Ladies and gentlemen, constant thoughts about someone without communication often indicate deep emotional attachment. You see, when your mind keeps going back to the same person over and over again, no matter how much time has passed, no matter how far they are, no matter what your current circumstances are, it's not just a coincidence. It's not just random. There's something deeper going on within you. It's not always about love in the romantic sense, but it is almost always about a connection that struck something real inside of you, something that mattered, something your heart held on to, even when life tried to pull you forward. When you think about someone constantly, even in their absence, even in total silence, that's not just memory replaying old scenes. That's your spirit reacting to a bond that didn't break just because the conversation stopped. You can try to distract yourself. You can try to stay busy, surround yourself with new people, even new relationships. But the truth is, if someone is still living in your head, they've touched a part of your soul. And your soul doesn't forget. Your soul remembers. Energy. It remembers how someone made you feel, how they saw you, how they made your world feel different just by being in it. It's possible to be emotionally attached to someone even when they haven't spoken to you in years. Because attachment doesn't require physical presence. It feeds off emotions, memories, moments, energy. Sometimes it even grows stronger in the absence. Because the mind starts to fill in the blanks with what ifs and if onlys. You start to wonder if they ever think about you too. You wonder if that moment you had, that connection you felt meant something to them the way it meant everything to you. And here's the wild part. You might have no closure. You might not even understand why that person means so much. You might not even have words to describe what they did to your life, but your mind keeps going back to them like a song on repeat. That's emotional attachment. That's the kind of bond that can't be erased by silence or time. And the more you try to ignore it, the louder it feels. Because the heart doesn't follow logic, it follows emotion. And when your emotions are tied to someone, even without current communication, it becomes part of your inner world. So when someone is always in your thoughts, without contact, pay attention. Your heart is telling you something. Your emotional attachment is speaking. And maybe it's not asking for you to act on it, but it is asking you to understand it. Because that kind of attachment, it doesn't come around often. And when it does, it's real. Silence can be louder than words. Your soul may recognize something your mind can't explain. There are moments in life when you don't need a text, a call, or a conversation to feel someone's presence. You don't need a reminder of their voice or their words to feel the weight they still carry in your heart. Silence in those moments speaks volumes. It doesn't whisper, it echoes. It echoes in your thoughts, in your emotions, in the way your heart skips a beat when their name crosses your mind, even if no one says it out loud. That silence is not empty. That silence is full of meaning. Sometimes you sit alone and suddenly feel a shift in your energy, like someone just walked into your spirit, and you know exactly who it is, even though they're nowhere near you, haven't spoken to you in forever. And maybe you have no clue what's going on in their world. Still, their presence is felt. That's not your imagination. That's not loneliness talking. That's something deeper, something spiritual. Because there are some connections in life that go beyond communication, they go beyond logic. They exist in a space that doesn't require proof for physical validation. You might try to rationalize it. You might tell yourself it's just a memory or I'm just overthinking. But there's a reason you feel a shift when they come into your thoughts. There's a reason your spirit feels them like a wave that washes over you without warning. When your soul recognizes someone, when it feels something unspoken but deeply understood, it doesn't need confirmation. It just knows. And that kind of knowing is rare. That kind of knowing can be confusing because it doesn't follow the rules of the mind. It doesn't need words. It doesn't need logic. It just is. That silence can also be a message. It can be a space where emotions speak louder than conversations ever could, where the lack of words actually highlights the intensity of the bond. Sometimes the silence screams where both hearts are too scared to say, I still think about you. I still feel something. I'd never really let go. It's not always about unfinished love. Sometimes it's about an unfinished story, a lesson, a moment, a purpose that hasn't played out completely. People can pretend, they can distract themselves, they can keep moving forward and act like it doesn't matter. But silence doesn't lie. Silence carries the truth when words run out. And if that person lives in your quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts, when the world is still, that means your soul still feels it. And you can't always explain that. You can't always understand it, but deep down, you know it's real. You know, the silence is saying something. And if you listen close enough, you hear everything that was never said out loud. Not every connection needs daily contact. Real bonds exist beyond time and space. You know, we live in a world that constantly tells us that communication equals connection. That if you're not texting someone, calling them, seeing them, then the bond must be fading or worse, gone. But that's not always the truth. Some connections are so real, so deeply rooted in who you are, that they don't need to be watered every day to stay alive. They exist on a different level. A level where presence isn't about being physically close, but emotionally and spiritually tied. There are people you haven't spoken to in years, yet the thought of them can still stop you in your tracks. One memory, one smell, one random moment can bring them right back like they never left. That's not just nostalgia. That's not just your brain pulling out an old file. That's a bond that refuses to break. That's the kind of connection that laughs in the face of time and distance. It's rare, but when it happens, it leaves an imprint so deep, no silence can erase it. The smile on your face when your worst enemy make you miserable. You see, we've been conditioned to measure relationships by consistency and contact. But the truth is, some people come into your life and change the way your heart beats. And even if you never speak again, your soul remembers them. It remembers how they made you feel, how they brought something out of you that no one else ever could. And that memory, that energy, it stays with you. It follows you into new chapters, into new relationships, sometimes even into new versions of yourself. This real connection doesn't fade, it transforms. Sometimes you grow apart. Life gets busy, priorities shift, people move on. But that doesn't make the bond any less real. It just means the relationship served its purpose for that time. And yet, despite all that change, the connection remains. Not in daily check-ins or updates, but in quiet ways. A song that makes you think of them, a place that brings back a laugh you shared, a lesson they taught you that still guides you when you're lost. That's what it means when a bond lives beyond contact. You might not hear from them, they might not hear from you, but deep down, you both know what you had was real. And that truth doesn't disappear just because the phone stops ringing. That truth sits quietly in the background of your life, showing up when you least expect it, reminding you that connection is not limited by time zones, schedules, or seasons. It exists because something inside you recognized something inside them. So don't doubt the power of that invisible thread that ties two hearts together. It doesn't always need to be seen to be felt. Some bonds are like gravity. You can't see it, you can't touch it, but it keeps pulling you back in ways you'll never be able to fully explain. And that's how you know it's real. It can mean unfinished emotional business or purpose tied to that person. Sometimes when someone keeps showing up in your thoughts, it's not just because of who they were, it's because of what they represented in your life. Maybe you had something with them that never got closure. Maybe a conversation was left hanging, a chapter left open, or a dream that never got the chance to come alive. And now, even in silence, even in their absence, the feeling lingers like a sentence without a period. It's that sense that something important was left undone, unsaid, or unresolved. The truth is, some people enter our lives for a reason that's bigger than we realize in the moment. They might come to teach us something, to reveal something hidden within us, or to trigger growth we never knew we needed. And when their part in our story seems to end too soon or too suddenly, our hearts can't help but hold on to the weight of what could have been. That's what keeps them alive in your thoughts. That's what pulls their name back into your mind in the quiet hours, when nothing else is distracting you from what your soul still remembers. Unfinished emotional business doesn't always mean there was heartbreak or pain. Sometimes it means the story had more to say, but life didn't give it the time to speak. Or maybe you weren't ready back then. Maybe they weren't ready. Timing didn't line up, maturity didn't match, or circumstances stood in the way. But that emotional thread, once created, doesn't just vanish. It stretches, it fades, but it doesn't break. It stays tied to your spirit, waiting for a moment of understanding, of clarity, of peace. And sometimes that person isn't just part of your emotional past. They're tied to your purpose. They sparked a part of you that no one else ever did. Maybe their presence awakened dreams you buried. Maybe they challenged your fears, believed in your potential, or made you see yourself in a new way. That kind of impact doesn't fade easily. Even when the person leaves, the purpose they ignited keeps burning. You start chasing things you were too afraid to chase before. You start becoming someone braver, stronger, wiser. Not because they stayed, but because of what they left behind. That's why it's so hard to let go. Because deep down, it's not just about missing them. It's about missing who you were becoming when you were connected to them. It's about feeling like there was more to learn, more to experience, more to share. And until that purpose is complete or that emotional lesson is understood, your mind will keep circling back to them, not to bring you pain, but to remind you that their role in your life meant something. And maybe, just maybe, it still does, even in silence, even in distance, even now. True connection always finds its way either to teach, transform, or release. When someone stays in your thoughts, even without communication, it's not just random. There's a reason, something deeper at work. Connection the kind that resonates at the core of who you are, is never truly lost. It's a force that continues to move through time, space, and silence, because genuine bonds have an energy that can't just be turned off. You can try to move forward, try to forget, but that connection will always find its way back into your life in some form or another. Sometimes that connection is there to teach you something. Maybe the person's presence in your life awakens something you hadn't noticed about yourself before. Maybe they helped you understand your own strengths, your own vulnerabilities, your own needs. They might have been a mirror reflecting the parts of you that needed growth or healing, even if they didn't know it at the time. It's funny how the people we encounter often show us who we are more clearly than we could ever see alone. And while they may not still be in your life, the lessons they imparted remain, woven into the fabric of who you've become. That's how true connection works. It doesn't always need to be about staying in constant communication or maintaining a physical presence. Sometimes the real value of a person in your life isn't about how much you talk, but how deeply you learn from one another. Even when they aren't there, the impact of their presence can still teach you. It may surface in ways you don't expect, reminding you of what you've learned and pushing you toward the next chapter in your journey. Other times, a true connection transforms you. It's one of those bonds that doesn't just pass through your life without leaving an impression. When you think about someone who continues to reside in your thoughts without speaking, it might be because their energy left a permanent mark on your spirit. You're not the same person you were when they entered your life, and perhaps you're not the same person you were after they left. The transformation can be subtle or dramatic. It might have been their courage that pushed you to take a risk you were too scared to take, or their kindness that taught you to be more compassionate, or their ambition that sparked your own drive to succeed. Even in the absence of their words or actions, they've shaped your journey, maybe in ways they'll never know. And now, even when you're not in contact with them, their influence stays with you like a seed planted deep in the soil of your life, continuing to grow. It's a testament to the power of true connection. It doesn't fade just because they're not physically there. Instead, it evolves, continuing to transform you into the person you were always meant to be. And sometimes the connection's purpose is to release you. It may be difficult to accept, but some bonds exist not to keep you tied to someone, but to help you let go. They're meant to teach you how to move forward, to let go of what no longer serves you, and to embrace the space for new opportunities. It's as if the connection in its deepest form knows when it's time for you to grow in new directions, and it gives you the strength, sometimes silently, to break free. Even without communication, you might realize that the person's absence creates the room for you to step into a new version of yourself. One you couldn't have embraced if that person had stayed. True connection doesn't just keep you close. It knows when to release, knowing that both souls will grow stronger through the process. Your heart knows what your logic might try to ignore. We are often taught to trust our heads over our hearts, to be rational and logical, and to make decisions based on what seems practical or sensible. But the truth is, your heart holds a wisdom that transcends what the mind can comprehend. The heart understands things that the mind cannot always explain or justify. It knows the people, the moments, and the connections that matter most, even when your mind tries to convince you otherwise. When someone stays in your thoughts, even without communication, it's often your heart that knows why. It recognizes the emotional significance of that person, even when your logical mind tells you to move on, to let go, to forget. Your heart doesn't forget easily. It doesn't let go of the connections that have touched it deeply. It holds on to them, even in silence, because it knows the impact they had. It knows what was real, even when logic tries to convince you that it's time to move forward. The heart doesn't follow the rules of time, distance, or practicality. It follows the energy of what felt right, what felt true. And when a person is on your heart, that connection can stay long after the words stop. Your mind, on the other hand, will often try to protect you from vulnerability. It tells you that moving on is the only way forward, that you shouldn't dwell on someone who's not in your life anymore. But your heart, in its own quiet way, knows better. It remembers what the mind can forget. It remembers the laughter shared, the understanding, the moments of peace or love that were exchanged. The heart knows that these things aren't easily erased by time or silence. It knows that some bonds are meant to be carried through life, not just forgotten in the next chapter. This is why we sometimes find ourselves thinking about someone at unexpected moments, even when we know logically they're not part of our lives anymore. It's not about clinging to the past. It's about the heart continuing to honor the connection even in its absence. The heart doesn't see endings the way the mind does. It doesn't view relationships in terms of closure or finality. Instead, it holds on to the emotional energy, the love, the lessons, the meaning, and that energy remains whether the person is there or not. Your heart understands that sometimes people come into your life to teach you something you didn't know you needed to learn. Sometimes it's not about forever, it's about the brief but powerful impact they had on your life. The mind may look for a reason or an explanation for why they mattered, but the heart knows. It knows that the meaning of certain connections can't be measured in time or frequency of contact. They're measured by how deeply they affect your spirit. And so your heart continues to carry them even in the quiet moments when they're not physically present. Your mind may try to explain it away, convince you that they're just a memory, a past chapter, but your heart holds on because it knows the truth that logic can't always grasp. It knows that some connections can never truly be severed, even when the words fall silent. Your heart keeps them alive because it recognizes what your mind sometimes overlooks. True connections never really end, they just find new ways to live on.